Hi, this is Diane Moore from the Chattanooga Public Library, looking into a massive, beautiful half of a hackberry tree. It's been around here forever. It's huge, but it's all leaning to one side of the ditch that it grows by. So it's more like half of a hackberry tree. And right next to it, I've got another tree that's just leaning right over my head, very far away from the ditch in the other direction. Now on this huge hackberry tree, I just want to walk over here because when I started looking at tree information at UT's website, it sort of cracked me up that they had a warning right away that when you were looking at trees and trying to identify them, to watch out for poison ivy. And this tree has an incredible crop of poison ivy, which will be gorgeous in the fall. It'll turn all red and pretty. One of the things I wanted to point out when you're trying to identify poison ivy, with its leaflets 3, I feel like the leaves look sort of leathery and they're really very shiny most of the time. That's something you just have to figure out for yourself, and hopefully not in a bad way. So now that you've been warned about poison ivy, I'm going to try to not seasick you and walk over to my little stand of baby trees. These are all trees I got from the annual tree sale that they have every year. That's a pumpkin, a volunteer pumpkin in my compost pile, my ex-compost pile. Every year through the Agricultural Extension Office, they sell trees. They used to be just free. Now they're a couple bucks each. They have some really cool things, pawpaws and elderberries and things that'll disappear really quickly. All the cool trees do. So over here I have a lot of trees lined up. These are all young trees. They might be a year or two old. And then right over here, let me change that perspective, sorry. I have 4 avocado trees. Now those I started from seed from my mom. She has a big greenhouse and she wants them. These trees can get really tall. So what we're going to do is prune them and train them so they're not gigantic. I'm going to use those to talk about something to think about when you're choosing trees and planting trees. We've lost a lot of trees this year, so this is a good time to replace trees. It's a good time to really think about what kind of tree that you want to plant. I would say if you love a tree, you're going to get it and you're going to plant it, but you might consider trees that can withstand some high wind. So here are all my little babies. Got some wild plum trees and a 9-bush, a mulberry, which, yeah, there are dwarf mulberries now, but regular mulberries are only dwarf because you stick them in a pot and they can't go anywhere. One little cute elderberry and a button bush. I really don't even know what that looks like, but I couldn't resist. It sounded cute. Here I have some oaks, a couple of red oaks, and then I've got a nuttall oak. None of those are very good for our purposes. One hasn't even leaked out yet. But these are going to be in the middle of a cow pasture, so it doesn't really matter. Live oaks, those are good to go. Now in these trees, I tried to pick the ones that were straight and tall with a good leader trunk. I'll confess that I picked 2 of the bald cypress trees. This one because it had a tall, beautiful trunk, and this one because it was the only one left and I was greedy and I wanted it. This one had a dual trunk on it. And since it was very young and small, and I've never seen a big bald cypress with dual trunks, I went ahead and snipped it off, stuck it in the dirt with its buddy, and I'm hoping that it's rooting because it is growing. It did leaf out. I don't know what happened here with my big, tall, beautiful one. It's got little branchy things coming out now, and I'm going to keep it because I love them, but if I were going to go to a nursery to pick a tree, I would pass that guy up. Now I've got a couple of other trees here. This is a redbud. Again, it's leaning to the side. It's got a really cool shape because it's a bonsai. tree, but I would never purchase this in a nursery. Same thing with this little guy here. Not as bad, but it's got 2 trunks. Again, it's a bonsai, and this one is special. It's actually a seedling from the massive Chinese elm that was in Miller Park. I passed it every day and I loved that tree, so this is one of its children destined to be bonsai forever. When you go to pick trees, you're going to pick young trees, and I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that we do when we plant trees. Some of the things that will help them to grow. I have one avocado here that is staked because it had some issues with trunks. These are going to be trimmed, like I said, and made smaller trees so they can fit in the greenhouse in the winter. The one in front, you can see its trunk is kind of leaning to the side. I forgot about that guy. It was behind my bay tree. The 2 behind it, I'm going to get down where you can see their trunks a little bit better. Those are straight and tall. When I took them out of my greenhouse, because they'd been in there for some months, they were flopping over just like the guy in front. I put them outside, I worried over them, I stressed over them, but they righted themselves and now they're strong and tall. Trees will naturally turn to the sun and right themselves if they're leaning a little bit. And they also need wind. We had a little bit of a breeze a minute ago and now it's gone. The prevailing wind makes the trees strong. It helps them develop a strong trunk. Sort of like you going to the gym and pumping iron. That's how they pump iron. So you don't want to stake a tree unless you have to do it just for a short period of time. You're going to see that all over the place. People staking trees so they don't tip over or fall over, especially if they're on a hill. But please try not to stake your trees if you can avoid that. Also, the time to have someone consult with you about your trees, according to Lee Rumble, a young guy who's an arborist and amazing at UT. He's got a series called Trees with Lee. I'll provide you with a link to that so you can look at that too, or you can go to UT's website and search for Lee. So we don't want to stake our trees if we can at all avoid that. When you plant your trees, the new way is not to dig a big giant hole, stick in some dirt that's all special and neat and full of nutrients. You want to spread those roots out. I don't have one ready to plant today or a place to plant it. Spread the roots out, dig the hole twice as wide as the tree's roots are. And you don't want them really deep. Now when these trees grow, you do want the roots to go deeply. If you have a tree and you've covered around it with landscape fabric, or you've put massive amounts of mulch down because you've done the evil volcano mulch, then you're gonna lose that tree when there's a storm. If 30% or more of the roots, you can see them, or you pull that landscape cloth up, or you have crossover roots coming up, and you can see a lot of roots underneath the landscape cloth or mulch. If it's 30% or more, you probably can't save that tree. Sorry, trees. So you want to try to avoid that. Avoid using a lot of nitrogen fertilizer. If you've got lawn and you're just throwing that stuff out there because, buddy, you have the best lawn in the neighborhood, you might cause that tree to develop too many surface roots as well. So kind of watch that when you grow the trees. And again, another thing that you can do, instead of waiting until you've had that tree for 20 years, and there it is, your baby's first swing, now your baby's 30, but it was in that tree, and all of your other little children climbed in the tree and you love it so much. And now it looks like it might have to go because it's got tree issues. Oh my goodness. The best time is to have someone come out. And if you don't want to spend a lot of money, go to your agricultural extension agent. Lee's a young guy, he's a real arborist. They can give you good advice. It's much better now while your tree is small than waiting until it's got some kind of issue. And when we have high wind storms and tornadoes and things like that, Well, little short guys aren't affected very much. But there's all sorts of things that can happen to the trunks, to the roots, to the branches. If it's topped over, tree topped, it's probably not going to do very well and survive. Young trees can recover better than old trees. But again, you're going to want to have someone come to look at that, because you don't want that tree to fall the next time there's a hard rain or some other kind of storm. Now, I've written down a list of some of the trees. These are southern trees, of course, and I'm going to show you that list. Trees that can withstand high wind: live oaks, flowering dogwoods, American beech, bald cypress, southern magnolia, that's the big ones, the gorgeous white flowers, ginkgo, sweet gum, palms, of course, crepe myrtle, tulip tree, holly, which I don't think there's any way to kill a holly, evergreens again, but again, not all pines. Shortleaf pine probably are fine. Now, those come from other lists. Some of those trees you're going to want to think about, and there's an article that I'm going to link you up with called Trees to Reconsider Before Planting from UT. Ginkgo trees, again, you plant that puppy up at the farm or someplace like that, it doesn't matter, you're going to feed the birds. But if you're living in an urban area and you have a female tree dropping those stinky fruits that smell kind of like bad Parmesan cheese, or a sweet gum tree or a black gum tree, and every time you go out in your yard you step on one and it hurts your foot and it makes you swear in front of your grandchildren, you have to rake them up, it's a pain when you mow. There's some other trees that were on the list, like black walnuts as well. Some of those trees you're going to have to think about where you're going to plant them. And there are other trees like the flowering dogwood. Red buds probably aren't bad. Those were in some of the other lists. But some of them are going to be susceptible to ice, which we don't have a lot of. But before you plant a tree, just really look at the characteristics of the tree. Think about whether you want to rake up nuts. Think about how big and spreading it's going to be when you have a 3-foot area to plant it in. You might consider a smaller tree in that case. So before you do that, just really think about your trees. Get someone to come look at them while they're young and your heart's not going to be broken. And just enjoy what you do get. Thank you so much. Be safe. Hopefully someday we'll all be able to go to work. I found that when you're working at home, there are some issues that you have to deal with. You can go 2 to 3 hours with a chocolate milk mustache or Joker smile and never know a thing about it. Thank you so much. Enjoy. And if you have any questions at all about trees, plants, or anything about gardening, please feel free to email the library, call the number, and I'll be glad to help you. What I don't know, I know a ton of master gardeners, and between us all, we're genius. Thanks. Have a good night.